Have you ever started to speak English and suddenly your mind just stops you open your mouth? You know what you want to say. The words were right there a moment ago. But now, nothing, just silence, and a feeling that starts in your chest and rises to your face: embarrassment, shame, and a quiet voice inside that says, "Why can I never do this?" This lesson is for English learners who want their voice back. I want to tell you about a woman named Sarah. She had studied English for years. She watched videos, read articles, practiced in her bedroom every single night before sleep. She felt ready. She felt confident. And then one morning, she walked into a job interview. The interviewer smiled and said, "Tell me about yourself." And Sarah's mind went completely blank. Not a little blank, completely blank. Like someone had reached inside her head and switched off the light. She sat there. She smiled back. She said, and then more silence. She got home that afternoon and cried. Not because she did not know English, she did, but because in that moment the English she knew disappeared. And she did not know why. Maybe you have felt this too. Not in a job interview. Maybe it was at a meeting or in a shop or when a stranger asked you for directions. Maybe it was with a friend who spoke English and you just nodded along even though you were not following because opening your mouth felt too dangerous, too risky, too easy to fail. If any of that sounds like you, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not broken. There is a real reason this happens. It is not about your vocabulary. It is not about how many years you have studied. It is about something much deeper, something happening inside your brain that nobody ever explains to people like you until today. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is going on when you freeze. You will stop blaming yourself. And you will have a clear, simple method to begin training your brain past that wall. Not someday, not after more study, starting today. Your brain has not failed you. It is simply waiting to be trained. Stay with me, because what I am about to share changes everything. And if you have never subscribed to this channel, right now is a good time. Press the button. There is more coming, and you do not want to miss any of it. Lesson 1: The real enemy. Here is what most people miss. When you freeze while speaking English, most people think the problem is vocabulary. They think I need to learn more words, or they think I need to study more grammar. So they go home, open their textbooks, and study harder. And then the next time they try to speak, they freeze again. Because the problem was never the words. Let me tell you what is actually happening inside your brain when you feel pressure to speak. Deep inside, there is an old system, a very old system, older than language, older than school, older than the idea of grammar. This system has one job, and it does that job very well. Its job is to protect you. When you feel threatened, this system activates. It looks at the situation and decides this is dangerous. And when it decides that it takes control, it sends signals through your body. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing changes. Your muscles tighten. And your thinking brain, the part that stores vocabulary and grammar and everything you studied, gets pushed to the side. Psychologists call this the stress response. Some people call it fight or flight, but for people learning a second language, it feels like something much simpler. It feels like your mind going blank. You know the word. You have used it before. You wrote it in your notebook 3 years ago. But in this moment, with this person looking at you and waiting for your answer, the word is simply gone. That is not a language problem. That is biology. Your brain looked at the situation, speaking in front of someone, the risk of sounding wrong, the fear of being judged, and it decided danger. And when your brain decides danger, it does not stop to think about vocabulary. It thinks about survival. Think about that. You are not forgetting English. The brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to keep you safe. The problem is that safety and fluency are not the same thing. A person who only ever speaks when they feel completely safe will never grow, because growth does not happen inside the comfort zone. Growth happens at the edge, where things feel uncertain, where your heart beats a little faster, where part of you wants to stay quiet, but another part of you knows that staying quiet is how you stay stuck. Most people who study a language train their brain to absorb it. They listen, they read, they study, they understand more and more. But understanding English and producing English are two completely different things. Someone who studies English builds knowledge. Someone who trains English builds a voice. Remember this, your brain has not failed you. It has simply not been trained yet. And the good news is this: what your brain learned, it can also unlearn. What froze once can learn to flow. But first, you have to understand the full picture of why the freeze happens. And that is what comes next. Lesson 2: 4 things at once. Pause for 1 second. I want you to imagine something. You are standing in front of someone who speaks English fluently. They ask you a question. A simple question. Something like, "What did you do last weekend?" Now watch what happens inside your mind. First, you hear the question, and your brain begins to translate. What does that mean? Okay. Good. I understand. Now, what is my answer? You begin to think in your own language. I went to a coffee shop. I met a friend. Now you need to translate that into English. Coffee shop. Yes, I know that word. Met. Past tense. Meet met. Yes. Okay. And then you need to think about pronunciation. Coffee. Is it coffee or coffee? Is my accent too strong? Will they understand me? And all of this is happening while you are also watching their face trying to seem natural, trying not to look like you are panicking, and trying to remember to breathe. Vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, meaning, social pressure, fear of judgment. 6 separate tasks happening at once. Not 2, not even 3. That is 6 separate tasks running through your brain at the exact same moment. Pause for 1 second and ask yourself honestly, is it really a surprise that your mind goes blank? I want to tell you about Maria. She is 28 years old. She has been studying for 6 years. At home alone, she is excellent. She plays English podcasts in the kitchen while she cooks. She listens to audiobooks on her commute. Sometimes she even talks to herself in the mirror practicing sentences, and she feels strong. She feels ready. And then she meets a native speaker at a party. The person smiles. Hello, nice to meet you. And something shifts. Maria knows this. She knows the greeting. She has practiced this exact phrase 100 times. But standing there with a real human being looking at her and waiting, everything collapses. The words do not come out in the right order. She hears her own accent and it sounds strange to her. She laughs nervously and switches to shorter answers. Yes, no, sorry, my English is not very good, but Maria's English is good. Her English was not the issue. The problem is that her brain has never been trained to handle all of those tasks at once under real pressure in real time. This is the difference between knowing a language and being able to use it when it counts. Think of it this way. A musician can practice each note slowly at home with no pressure. But performing on a stage with an audience is a completely different experience. The notes are the same, but everything else is different. The stakes are different. The nerves are different. The demands on the brain are different. English is the same. Knowing the language in a quiet room is one skill. Producing it under pressure in real conversation is another skill entirely. And most people only ever train the first one. 4 tasks at once is too many for any brain. Even a native speaker would struggle if they had to consciously think about every single word before they said it. But here is the truth that nobody tells you. The more you practice speaking under real pressure, the fewer of those tasks your brain has to think about consciously. They become automatic. They become reflex. They become muscle memory. And that is when the words start to flow. We will get there. But first, I need to show you the trap that most learners fall into, the loop that keeps them frozen. That is next. Lesson 3, the freeze loop. Think about what happens after you freeze, not during, after. You walk away from the conversation. Maybe you are on the bus home, or washing dishes, or lying in bed that night, and the moment replays. You hear the silence again. You feel the heat in your face again. And the voice inside your head begins its work. Why did I freeze? I knew that word. Why could I not just say it? I have been studying for years. What is wrong with me? Maybe I am just not good at languages. Maybe some people have it and some people do not. Maybe I should just stop trying. That voice sounds like honesty. It sounds like self awareness. But it is not. It is a trap. Because every time you tell yourself that story, I am bad at English, I always freeze speaking, is not for me, your brain listens. And your brain believes what you repeat to yourself. This is not just a motivational idea. This is how the mind actually works. The story you tell yourself becomes the wall you build. And then something else happens. Because you froze and because it felt so bad, you begin to avoid the situations where it might happen again. You stay quieter in meetings. You let someone else order at the restaurant. You type instead of call. You smile and nod in conversations you do not fully follow. And every time you avoid, your brain learns something. It learns that speaking English is dangerous. It learns that silence is safer. It learns to freeze faster next time because freezing worked. It kept you safe. It kept you away from the judgment, away from the embarrassment. This is the freeze loop. Pressure leads to freeze. Freeze leads to shame. Shame leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to more pressure next time. And the loop continues. A weak mindset says, I am just bad at languages. A strong mindset says, I have not trained my speaking enough yet. That one shift changes everything. Because if the problem is who you are, there is nothing you can do. But if the problem is what you have trained, then the answer is simple. Train differently. I want you to think about the last time you froze. Not to feel bad about it, just to look at it clearly. Was it in front of someone you wanted to impress? Was it when the stakes felt high? Was it after you had not spoken English out loud in several days? In most cases, the answer is yes to all three. That is not weakness. That is a pattern. And patterns can be broken. And here is the most important thing to understand. You are not broken. What is happening is simply a pattern. It was never taught to stop. A pattern that can change. The freeze loop exists because your brain has been trained in one direction over and over without you even realizing it. But your brain can also be trained in the other direction, toward flow, toward confidence, toward the words coming out naturally, even when the pressure is real. The next part of this video is about exactly that. Not more studying, not more listening. Something different, something most people who study languages never try. And it starts with understanding the real difference between knowing a language and training your voice in it. Stay with me. Lesson 4. The first crack. Let me make this simple. There are 2 ways to train a language. Most people only ever use one of them. The first way is input. You listen, you read, you absorb, you watch English videos, read English articles, follow English podcasts. This is how most language learners spend most of their time. And it is valuable, truly valuable. Your vocabulary grows. Your ear gets sharper. Your understanding deepens. Input is important, but input alone will never make you fluent. And here is why. When you listen or read, your brain is receiving. It is passive. It is processing information that is coming in. That is one muscle. But when you speak, your brain has to produce. It has to reach into storage and pull out the right word in the right order at the right speed, while also managing your breathing, your tone, your listener's reaction. That is a completely different muscle. And like any muscle, if you never train it, it stays weak. You can read about swimming every day for 10 years, but the first time you get in the water, you will still struggle. Because reading about swimming and actually swimming are two different things. The knowledge is not the same as the skill. Passive knowledge and active speaking are two different muscles. You have been training one and ignoring the other. Now, let me tell you about a man who figured this out not through a language class, but through a simple daily habit. Every morning, he stopped at the same coffee shop on his way to work. And every morning, he ordered his drink in English. That was it. One sentence, sometimes two. Good morning. One flat white, please. Thank you. Have a good day. The first week, his voice shook. He second-guessed every word. He rehearsed the sentence on the street outside before he walked in. Sometimes he got it wrong. Once he said the wrong size. Once he forgot the word for extra and just pointed. But he came back the next morning. And the morning after that, by the third week, something had shifted. He was not thinking about the words anymore. They were just coming out. His brain had practiced this exact moment enough times that it no longer needed to work so hard. The route from thought to word had become shorter, smoother, automatic. That is what output training does. It does not just teach you words. It builds the pathway from your brain to your mouth. It trains the route, not just the destination. You do not need a perfect situation to start. You do not need a native speaker to practice with every day. You need one small moment of real output repeated consistently until your brain stops treating it as a threat and starts treating it as normal. If this is opening something in, you press subscribe right now. There is more coming in this channel, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Start smaller than you think is necessary. One sentence, one moment, one coffee shop. The crack in the wall does not need to be wide. It just needs to be real. Lesson 5. Train the mouth, not the mind. Hear me on this. Most people learning a new language think that fluency is a thinking problem. They believe that if they can just think faster, if they can just recall words more quickly, if they can just process grammar more efficiently, then the speaking will follow. So they study more, they review their notes, they memorize more vocabulary lists. But fluency is not a thinking problem. Fluency is a movement problem. Speaking is physical. Your mouth moves. Your tongue positions itself. Your breath pushes air through your throat in a particular rhythm. Your jaw opens and closes. These are not ideas. These are actions. And actions become smooth, not through more thinking, but through more doing. Kobe Bryant did not become one of the greatest basketball players in history by thinking about shooting. He arrived at the gym before sunrise. He took the same shots from the same spots on the court hundreds of times day after day, year after year. Not because he needed to learn the technique anymore. He already knew the technique. He practiced because he wanted the technique to live in his body, not just in his mind. He wanted to reach a point where the action happened without thought, where the decision and the execution were the same moment. That is what you are building when you train your English speaking. At this stage, you are not adding new information. You are moving something from your mind into your body, from knowledge into reflex. There are two methods that do this better than anything else. The first is shadowing. Find a short piece of spoken English, something natural, 30 seconds to 1 minute long. A podcast clip, a short video, a scene from a show you enjoy. Play it, then speak along with it at the same time, matching the speed, the rhythm, the pauses. Do not worry about understanding every word perfectly. Focus on the movement. Focus on how the sounds feel in your mouth, how the sentences flow, how one word connects to the next without stopping. Do this every day. Even 10 minutes is enough. Think of it as rehearsal, not study. You are training the mouth. The second method is self-talk. Narrate your day in English inside your head or quietly out loud. I am making coffee. It is a cold morning. I need to leave in 20 minutes. Simple sentences. Present tense. No audience. No pressure. Just your brain and your mouth building the habit of reaching for English first. Most people practice where it is safe, where no one is watching, where nothing is at stake, and there is value in that. But champions practice at the edge of what is comfortable. They find the spot where it is slightly too hard, slightly too fast, slightly too real, and they stay there until it becomes easy. Then they move the edge further. Fluency lives on the other side of discomfort. You will not get there by staying in the comfortable zone of only listening and reading. You have to move. You have to speak. Even badly, even slowly, even alone in your kitchen with no one listening but you. Your mouth already knows more than you give it credit for. It just needs more practice being brave. Lesson 6. Pressure is the teacher. Now think about this. Everything we have talked about so far, the shadowing, the self-talk, the daily output habits, all of it is preparation. It is important. It is necessary. But preparation is not the same as performance. And at some point, you have to step into the real thing, because here is what no practice method can fully replicate: a real human being looking at you, waiting for your answer. That specific pressure, the social pressure, the live pressure, the pressure of someone else's time and attention, is the thing that makes your brain freeze. So, the only way to train your brain past that freeze is to expose it to that pressure regularly, deliberately, on purpose. Bruce Lee, one of the greatest martial artists who ever lived, built his entire philosophy around one idea. It was not about learning 10,000 different moves. It was about returning again and again to the same fundamental actions until they became part of him, until there was no gap between thinking and doing, until the response and the situation were one single moment. The people who break through their English freeze are not the ones who studied the longest. They are not the ones with the best grammar or the biggest vocabulary. They are the ones who kept showing up to real situations even when it was uncomfortable, even when they made mistakes, even when they froze. They came back. They tried again. They let the pressure teach them. Think about two groups of people. The first group knows they are not fluent, so they wait. They wait until their English is better. They wait until they feel ready. They hold on until the fear feels smaller. They study more. They tell themselves soon, soon I will be ready. Soon I will speak. The second group knows they are not fluent and they speak anyway. They ask for help in English even when their sentence is not perfect. They start conversations even when they know they might struggle. They make phone calls in English even when it feels terrifying. They let themselves be imperfect in front of real people in real moments. 1 year later, the first group has more knowledge. The second group has a voice. Comfort is the enemy of fluency. Now, I am not telling you to throw yourself into situations that feel impossible. I am not telling you to sign up for a presentation in English tomorrow if that fills you with panic. The edge should be reachable. Uncomfortable, yes, but reachable. Maybe it is asking one question in English at your next meeting instead of staying silent, or calling a company instead of sending an email. Maybe it is starting one conversation a week with a stranger, a shopkeeper, a colleague, someone low stakes, where freezing does not cost you anything important. The brain that freezes today is the same brain that will flow tomorrow. The brain just needs to be shown the way. And the way you train it is by walking toward the pressure, not away from it. One small step, one real moment, one time where you spoke even though you were afraid. And then another and another, until your brain stops reading those situations as danger and starts reading them as familiar. Familiar is the beginning of fluent. Lesson 7, the brain that changes. I want you to imagine something with me. 1 year from now, you are in a conversation in English, maybe with a colleague at work, maybe with a stranger at a conference, maybe on a phone call you would have avoided today, and something is different. The person asks you a question, and you answer, not perfectly, not like a native speaker, but you answer. The words come, not all at once, not without effort, but they come, and you keep going. And the conversation moves forward. And somewhere in the middle of it, you realize you have not thought about grammar once. You have not translated a single word in your head. You are just talking. This is not wishful thinking. This is neuroscience. Your brain has a quality that scientists call neuroplasticity. It means the brain can change. It can rewire itself. It can build new pathways, strengthen weak connections, and let go of old patterns that no longer serve you. The brain is not fixed. The brain never stops. It does not stop growing when you reach a certain age or a certain level. It keeps changing in response to what you do, what you practice, and what you repeatedly ask it to do. Carol Dweck, a researcher at Stanford University, spent decades studying how people learn and grow. She found something that changed the way many educators think about intelligence. People who believe their abilities can grow through effort. What she called a growth mindset. Learn more, recover from failure faster, and achieve more over time than people who believe their abilities are fixed. Not because they are smarter, but because they keep going when things get hard. Because they see difficulty as information, not as proof of limitation. When you freeze in English, you have two choices about what story you tell yourself. The fixed story says, "This is who I am. I am the kind of person who freezes. Some people are good at languages, and I am not one of them." That story closes the door. The growth story says, "This is where I am right now. My brain has not yet built the pathways it needs, but it can, and it will. If I keep training." That story opens the door. Your brain is not broken. It is just untrained. And untrained does not mean unable. Untrained means not yet automatic, not yet smooth, not yet fast, but on its way. If you keep going, every time you shadow a podcast clip, you are laying a new pathway. Narrating your morning in English strengthens another connection. Every time you speak in a real situation, even for 30 seconds, even imperfectly, even with your heart beating faster than you would like, you are teaching your brain something new. You are showing it that this is safe, that this is familiar, that this is something you do. And over time, over weeks and months of consistent, deliberate, uncomfortable practice, something shifts. The pathways get wider. The connections get stronger. The space between thought and word gets shorter. And one day, maybe not dramatically, maybe just quietly in the middle of an ordinary conversation, you realize the freeze is gone. Not because you studied harder, not because you found a secret method, but because you trained, because you showed up, because you gave your brain what it needed: time, repetition, and real experience, and you trusted it to do the rest. You are not quiet because you cannot speak. You are quiet because your brain has not been shown the way yet. Today, you showed it. Let us bring this together. We started today with a question. Why does your mind go blank when you speak English? And now you know the answer. Not the surface answer, the real one. Your brain goes blank because it perceives speaking as a threat. The stress response takes over, and your thinking mind steps aside. That is why the freeze happens at all. It gets worse because managing vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and meaning all at once is simply too many tasks for any brain under pressure. And then the shame after the freeze teaches avoidance, which deepens the pattern and makes it harder to break. But you also learned something more important than the problem. You learned the path out. Output training is different from input training. Knowing a language and producing it are two different muscles, and most learners only train one. The mouth needs daily practice of its own, shadowing self-talk. Small moments of real output repeated until they become automatic. Real pressure is not the enemy, but the teacher. Walking toward uncomfortable situations, one small step at a time, is how your brain unlearns the freeze. And finally, your brain is not fixed or finished. Neuroplasticity means the pathways you need can be built at any age, at any level, with enough consistent practice and enough self-belief. 7 lessons, one truth underneath all of them. Your brain is not broken. It is just untrained. You did not come to this video by accident. You came because something in you is ready to stop avoiding, ready to stop blaming yourself for something that was never really your fault, ready to start training in a different direction. So here is what I want you to do. Not someday, today, find one small moment of English output before this day ends. Order something. Send a voice message. Talk to yourself for 2 minutes while you walk. Narrate your evening out loud in English, even if your cat is the only one listening. Make it small. Make it real. Make it today. Because every long journey begins with one honest step. And you have already taken it by being here. For every English learner out there, keep going every single day, and your brain will learn to flow. Tell me in the comments, when do you freeze the most? Is it with strangers, at work, or on the phone? I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next lesson.